The moment Jessica Tarlov stepped onto the debate stage, the studio lights seemed to tilt in her favor, clean lines, polished confidence, and a smile that spoke more of television than truth. This wasn't just any panel, it was the Global Voices forum hosted in New York, streamed live to 82 countries. Opposite her, seated calmly with arms folded, was Captain Ibrahim Traoré, unshaken, unreadable. She leaned forward, voice sharp with assured cadence. "Let's be honest," she began, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "We represent progress. Our systems, our support structures, our institutions, they've built bridges around the world. Stability doesn't come from rage, it comes from reason." There was applause, not much, but enough to charge the air with tension. Traoré blinked slowly, the corners of his mouth unmoved. He didn't even reach for the mic. Instead, he turned his gaze toward the camera, and his first words came like stone wrapped in silk. "You don't represent progress," he said. "You represent pressure. The kind that builds over generations and crushes everything beneath it." The moderator shifted in his seat. Tarlov wasn't expecting that. Her rebuttal was ready for politics, not poetry. "You enjoy the benefits of what you call pressure," she shot back, voice tightening. "Global funding, international relief, trade access. That pressure you speak of, it's the hand that feeds." Traoré raised an eyebrow. "I've seen your hand," he replied. "It shakes when people stop obeying." The crowd hushed. His tone wasn't loud, but the silence that followed made it sound like thunder. Tarlov smiled again, but this time it didn't quite reach her eyes. "And without our systems? You collapse. You think independence means isolation?" He leaned in. "No," he said softly. "I think it means breathing without asking permission." That line cracked through the room like a bell. People weren't clapping anymore. They were watching, closer now. Traoré hadn't raised his voice. But he'd raised the stakes. Jessica Tarlov was seasoned. A strategist, a commentator, a woman fluent in the language of panels and policy. But Traoré, he wasn't playing the game by her rules. And that made him dangerous. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her legs with deliberate grace, then spoke with a touch more venom beneath the surface. "So, what's the plan, Captain? Tear it all down? Replace global cooperation with bravado?" Traoré looked at her. Calm. Almost amused. "I don't destroy what isn't mine," he replied. "But I won't pretend your systems weren't built to benefit you first, and bind us second." That one landed hard. Jessica narrowed her eyes. "We've sent billions in aid. Built roads, schools, hospitals. You built dependence," Traoré interrupted. "And called it kindness." Now the audience stirred. Cameras panned. Social media buzzed. The comment sections were already exploding. Jessica straightened in her seat. "Do you really believe your people don't want our help?" "They want freedom," he said. "And freedom doesn't come with terms and conditions." The moderator jumped in, clearly nervous now. "Let's steer this back to economic policy." But neither of them was letting go. Jessica snapped, "You're oversimplifying. There's nuance, history." "I know history," Traoré said firmly. "Mine was written in chains. Yours in contracts." The moderator's voice cracked. "Let's move." "Let her speak," Traoré said, eyes still locked on Jessica. But Jessica didn't speak. Not right away. Her silence said more than her facts ever could. Then finally, she said it. "You want to be respected. I get it. But respect is earned, not demanded." Traoré's answer was instant. Quiet. Devastating. "Exactly. And that's why I don't ask for it." The crowd went quiet again, this time, deeper. Jessica's smirk faded. Her next words didn't come as easily. She came to lead the discussion. But Traoré had taken the room. Jessica tried to recover. Her voice regained its rhythm, but the edge was gone. So you're saying we should just walk away? Let countries like yours navigate chaos alone? She meant it as a trap. But Traoré smiled, just enough to disarm the attack. No, he said calmly. I'm saying maybe the chaos came with you. The crowd didn't gasp this time. It groaned, a slow, collective noise that signaled they understood the weight of what was just said. Jessica leaned forward now, voice rising. You think isolation is power? You think rejecting global structure makes you strong? Traoré didn't blink. I think pretending a cage is a palace makes you weak. This wasn't just a clash of ideologies. It was a clash of truths. Uncomfortable ones. Jessica's tone hardened. You sound rehearsed. Righteous. But it's all theater. You're a populist with a platform. And you're a professional with a script, he shot back. But this world no longer runs on scripts. She laughed, but the room didn't join her. The audience had shifted. They weren't picking sides, they were watching. Closely. Waiting. You don't understand diplomacy, she said, voice low. You understand defiance. Because for too long, defiance was all we were allowed, Traoré answered. And now you call it aggression. Jessica's face twitched, an expression she couldn't quite control. He wasn't playing the villain she expected. He was something else, calm, direct, unshaken. It unsettled her. I'm not your enemy, she said finally. No, Traoré replied. But you're not my compass either. And with that, the balance of the debate tipped again, this time in silence. Jessica shifted in her chair. For the first time, she didn't jump to speak. The silence stretched, and that alone gave Traoré power. He leaned forward. Not aggressively. Deliberately. You speak of progress, he said softly. But tell me, whose? Jessica blinked. Our progress, she replied. No, Traoré said. Your comfort. The words weren't loud, but they sliced through the air. Everyone felt it. Jessica tried to recover. We've sacrificed for the world. You've invested in it, he interrupted. For profit. For leverage. For control. She exhaled, frustrated. That's how systems work. You can't rewrite the whole world. Traoré's eyes didn't flinch. Then I'll start with my part of it. Jessica's mask of control cracked again, just slightly. Her voice rose, sharper this time. You think tearing it down helps anyone? I think pretending it's not broken is what's dangerous, Traoré replied. We don't need to burn everything. Just stop acting like the fire's your gift. The moderator tried to interject, but the crowd was glued, silent, leaning forward, pulled into the gravity of the exchange. Jessica shook her head. And what do you build instead? A new empire? One led by you? No, Traoré said. One led by us. Those who've watched the world decide for them long enough. He didn't preach. He didn't plead. He just stood in truth. And in that moment, Jessica realized something. The audience wasn't looking at a rebel. They were looking at a leader. Jessica Tarlov wasn't used to losing ground. But this was different. The audience wasn't just listening. They were leaning away from her. Towards him. I work in policy, she snapped, regaining her footing. You work in spectacle. Traoré didn't blink. Policy, he echoed. You write papers. We bury bodies. Her face tightened. That's not fair. Neither is history, he said calmly. The moderator looked nervous. The camera zoomed in. The crowd didn't move. Jessica raised her voice. We give aid. We support democracies. We protect freedom. Traoré finally smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was knowing. Tired. Sharp. You support favorites, not freedom, he replied. You protect contracts, not people. There it was. The line. The audience murmured. Some clapped. A few gasped. Jessica leaned forward now, her tone cutting. You're playing a dangerous game, Mr. Traoré. And you've mistaken silence for peace, he answered. She straightened. You have no allies in this room. He looked around. I don't need the room. I have the ground. Even the moderator froze. Jessica's eyes flicked to the control booth. The producers were scrambling, trying to pivot, trying to save the narrative. But it was already lost. This wasn't a debate anymore. It was a reckoning. Jessica Tarlov tried to recover by shifting the argument. If you resist collaboration, she said, you'll isolate your people. You'll collapse your economy. It's that simple. Traoré stood taller. You think Africa has never been isolated? He asked. We were cut off, not by choice, but by chains. Yet still, we grow. Jessica hesitated. Her prepared talking points were failing. Again. Progress, she insisted, requires integration, modern systems, modern alliances. He stepped forward. No. Your progress requires our silence. Your systems are built on us, not with us. The room had gone from silent to still. The air, heavier. Traoré's voice dropped lower. Firmer. You ask us to plug into your wires. But we have our own roots. Deep ones. You fear that. You call it regression. I call it return. Jessica scoffed. So you'd rather look backward than forward? No, he said. I look downward. Into the soil. Into the pain. Into what you buried and hoped we'd forget. That landed. Jessica's lips parted, but no words came. You see a continent you can shape, Traoré continued. We see a continent that's reshaping you. Quietly. Firmly. Without your permission. Someone in the audience whispered, he's not wrong. Jessica heard it. And for the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed her expression. Traoré didn't press. He didn't raise his voice. He simply let the silence bloom. Jessica's eyes scanned the room, hunting for support, but even her allies were motionless. Cameras panned slowly across the studio, capturing not just the debate, but the shift. She tried again, voice more composed this time. You speak of pain as if it justifies defiance. You weaponize history. Traoré didn't flinch. And you sanitize it, he replied. Which is more dangerous? That line hit like a slap. You want us in your orbit, he continued, but only if we rotate quietly. Jessica leaned into the desk, attempting to reclaim control. You're twisting intention. This isn't about silence, it's about stability. Traoré turned toward the audience. Stability without dignity is just a slower kind of collapse. The audience murmured. Jessica's expression hardened, but her eyes betrayed her. There was a flicker of something she couldn't mask, doubt. You want our gold, he said calmly, but not our governance. You want our land, but not our leadership. That's not true, she snapped, louder than she intended. Traoré remained composed. You say progress, he said, but your progress ends when we rise too high. Then suddenly, we're threats. Jessica's voice cracked, that's not fair. He looked at her, not with anger, but with clarity. What's not fair, he said, is asking us to forget everything while you remember nothing. The room froze again. It was no longer a debate. It was a reckoning. Jessica's voice faltered. For the first time, she wasn't performing, she was reacting. Every prepared line, every cue card in her mind seemed to blur under the weight of what had just been said. Traoré leaned back in his chair, not smug, just certain. "I'm not here to argue with a mirror," he said, gesturing subtly toward her. "I'm here to break it." Jessica blinked. "What mirror?" she asked. Traoré didn't hesitate. "The one you built. The one where you reflect your power onto others and expect them to thank you for it." The moderator shifted uncomfortably but didn't interrupt. Jessica regained her composure and straightened her back. "You're making this personal," she said. "No," Traoré replied. "You made it personal the day you dressed control as charity and called it diplomacy." There was a sharp inhale from someone in the back of the studio. Jessica attempted to reframe. "We've offered partnerships, funding, resources." "Strings," he cut in. "Always strings." Wrapped in polite smiles. She tried to smile again, but it faltered. "You act as if we're the enemy." "You're not the enemy," he said. "But you are terrified of what happens when we stop asking." Jessica paused. Then she did what no one expected, she looked down. Not out of defeat, but because in that moment, she realized something: this wasn't working. Traoré let the silence breathe. "You don't have to kneel," he said softly. "But you do have to listen." And with that, the studio, once again, fell utterly silent. The cameras were still rolling, but Jessica had stopped performing. She wasn't adjusting her blazer anymore. Wasn't glancing toward the producers behind the glass. She was still. Traoré had taken control of the room, not with volume, not with charm, but with presence. It wasn't theatrical. It was tectonic. Jessica broke the silence first, voice lowered. "You think you've won something here?" Traoré shook his head. "This isn't a win. This is a warning." She tilted her head, trying to recover the upper hand. "A warning?" He nodded once. "You've pushed your narrative for decades. Written scripts for entire continents. But those scripts are being burned, and we're writing our own." Jessica's tone shifted, part defiant, part defensive. "We've offered systems that work." "Systems that work for you," he corrected. "But not for the ones beneath them." She tried again. "Without those systems, where would your people be?" He looked her dead in the eye. "Free." The room froze. Jessica glanced at the crew, clearly unsettled now. Traoré leaned forward, just enough to make the distance between them feel irrelevant. "Your problem, Jessica, is that you mistake resistance for ignorance. You think pushback means we haven't understood your model. We have. We just reject it." That line landed like a punch. Someone in the crew actually murmured, "Wow." Jessica swallowed hard. The power balance had shifted so completely that she looked less like a commentator and more like someone defending a crumbling doctrine. Traoré stood, slowly, respectfully. "I didn't come here to be polite," he said. "I came here to be clear." And then he walked off set. The moderator stared at the camera, stunned. Jessica didn't say a word. Because for once, she had nothing left to say. The clip spread within minutes. A short segment, barely 90 seconds long, Traoré standing, Jessica silent, the words, "We understood. We just reject it." It went viral, not just for the content, but for the discomfort. The silence. The reversal. Jessica Tarlov, a name known for smooth dominance in political debates, was left wordless. And Traoré? He didn't gloat. He didn't tweet. He didn't need to. Because the world was doing it for him. Headlines read: "The day the debate turned. Traoré speaks." The West listens. Who really represents progress? Jessica went on damage control. He was disrespectful, she told one outlet. It wasn't a conversation, it was an ambush. But even her supporters weren't buying it. The footage was too clear, the posture too poised. There was no malice in Traoré's tone, only certainty. Behind closed doors, networks scrambled. Can we get him back? Producers asked. Can we sit him across from someone else, someone stronger? But they misunderstood again. It wasn't about winning a segment. It wasn't about points scored. It was about presence. Perspective. Power that didn't beg to be seen. Traoré returned home to cheering crowds, not because he embarrassed anyone, but because he stood his ground. Because he said no where the world expected him to nod. Meanwhile, Jessica stayed quiet. A few tweets. A reshuffled appearance schedule. But the silence, again, said more than words. She wasn't the first to underestimate him. She wouldn't be the last. But now, they knew what it felt like when a continent spoke through a man, and refused to whisper. They thought they could define progress. They thought they could lecture the world, again. But Ibrahim Traoré didn't come to be lectured. He came to lead. In one conversation, he didn't just silence Jessica Tarlov. He silenced an entire mindset. Because real progress isn't packaged in polished studios or polite applause. It's forged in resistance. It speaks calmly but stands firmly. It doesn't echo old power. It builds new ground. And when that ground shakes, the world listens. This wasn't just a debate. It was a shift. And Traoré didn't just win it. He rewrote it.